Let's get to the tariffs now. Man, there has been such a whirlwind around this. Let's put this up there on the screen. Just actually very relevant, something we should discuss about process, about incompetence. This is basically straight out of the first term. So, quote, Trump advisors took advantage of Navarro's absence to push for a tariff pause. Peter Navarro, quote, had been a fixture on the president's side after Liberation Day. So the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, and Secretary Bessent, they wanted a 90-day pause on the global tariff plan. So what they did is they basically created a situation where somebody else in the White House complex invited Navarro to a meeting. Now, he invited them to a meeting which was across the street. Now, while Navarro is conveniently across the street and cannot argue against Secretary Bessent and Secretary Lutnick, Secretary Bessent and Lutnick rush into the Oval Office, quote, to see Trump and propose a pause on these tariffs without Navarro there to argue or to push back. They know they had only a very tight window. It was not on Trump's public schedule. The two men convinced him of the strategy to announce the pause and stayed with Trump until he tapped out his Truth Social post, which surprised Navarro, who happened to be in a meeting. And then immediately Secretary Bessent walks out of the West Wing in front of the cameras to declare the policy, Ryan. So that is the level of care and attention that the steward of the global economy it currently has over all of our fates, our business here at Breaking Points, and so much more.
The most important thing here is obviously the fate of the global economy and all the people that that rely on it. Yeah. But underneath it, there's been this bubbling question of insider trading. This, in an interesting way, exonerates, from my perspective, the charges of insider trading, because in order for you to insider trade, you have to have reliable information from the inside that you can then trade off. Nobody, including Navarro, knew, including Trump.
Well, and the U.S. Trade Representative,
including Lutnick, including Bessent, none of them knew that they would successfully persuade Trump. Like, they had a plan, but you can't trade off just a plan. Insider trading is supposed to be, you know for a fact, X thing is going to happen. So they go in, it's just the three of them, and then he taps it out on his phone right there.
I'll give you a counter.
3,000 points up.
Here's my counter. Let's say
this is all a lie.
So one of the reports from behind the scenes is that Secretary Bessent, all week long, all he's doing is taking calls from these Wall Street guys, being like, you need to stop, you need to stop, you need to stop. Let's say that he tells them, he goes, listen, I'm walking into the Oval soon, and I'm going to try and to change his mind. It's not a guarantee.
Right, it's still a bet.
Yeah, but these guys make bets all the time, right? It's a tremendous amount of upside.
It's a stronger bet.
It's a stronger bet. You know, it's a little bit of information. Like, let's say, if you can
it's more than you and I know.
Here's the thing, you know, I do a lot of reading about ways to beat the casino. Plot twist, it doesn't usually work. But the thing is that if you can even rule out, let's say, 1/5 of the roulette board, that changes the odds for everything else, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to win, but in the long run,
you'll win.
In the long run, you will win. So there you go. So that's just a little bit of information about what might not happen or might happen is enough to make a more of a structured bet, which you might be able to take to the bank. And obviously it worked out for
Fair point. But like we said, the bigger point is we are all living and dying by this, and it does not give you much confidence in the overarching strategy here, which we can get into more, because the U.S. is now dealing with the European Union. We can put this next element up on the screen here. We're seeing the U.S. put into this extraordinarily difficult position where we are going into these negotiations in a badly weakened place. The dollar's crashing, our stock market is crashing, the bond market is crashing, and you're seeing travel drop in a way that is utterly extraordinary. So it's partly the trade war that's going on, but I think primarily, the trade war is creating a lot of anger. But I think people don't make a lot of their individual travel decisions based on their political thoughts about the leadership of a country. People are nervous that they're going to wind up in detention centers for some violation in their visa. I'm curious how this lands on the right. On the left, we're like, we love foreign travel because it's good for the economy. And and we don't do much else. Like, we are a service economy, and we're a nice place.
Exactly. So travel, I'm not going to downplay it. I'm not going to overstate it either. It's 9% of U.S. GDP. That's a lot. There are rough.
I think it's only 0.3%. Well, 9% total. Yes.
Yeah. So if we look,
which is massive.
No, I'm not. So again, I'm not going to downplay it.
Right.
It's also not Nvidia. Okay, it's not the S&P 500. Now, that's easy for me to say, and I'm not talking to what I'm trying to think. Orlando. If you own a hotel in Orlando, God bless you, okay? I feel bad for you. You know, you just got a massive hit. If you own anything in upstate New York or in Seattle, where a bunch of Canadians are always traveling to, apparently Canadians love Vegas. Vegas is taking an absolute beating right now. I have more ambivalence about that one. But in terms of letting them take a hit. My point is that there are a lot of people out there rely on this for income. I'm not going to downplay that at all. At the same time, we are still talking about a 17% drop in travel. And, you know, that's not bad. That's bad.
The numbers are just coming in, though.
Zero.
Right, but that's just what we've been able to measure so far. Like, the direction of that arrow, it's like the Hamas carrot.
Look, I feel complicated about it in certain ways because, you know, this is the same GDP argument, right, that people make about foreign real estate. It's like, listen, you got we're the world's capital destination. I'm like, yeah, but that's bad for a lot of people who are here. One of the things I think that went most wrong with America and its global cities is that our cities, when I say global, they really are global, as in they are the global playground for the world's rich in the same way that Monaco or something is. Los Angeles is not for America, okay? It's for the richest people on earth to all gather. Same thing with New York City, Manhattan real estate. It's a joke. Like, if you're a rich Chinese or rich Russian or rich whatever, you know, from some tiny African country, you're the one billionaire from there. You're hanging out in Manhattan. Everybody who lives or
and it's money
these cities,
laundering.
they know that. It's not only money laundering. Go to Miami. What is it? 26% or whatever of the real estate there is bought. I'm talking specifically about real estate, but what I'm saying is that there is a downside to being. Yes, but what I'm saying is that being the global destination for the world's elite, yes, it's good for GDP purposes, but you lose a lot whenever that happens as well, because you basically become this playground where we're like serving these like super rich, I don't know, Guinea-Bissauans like in Miami, and you're like, well, what's going on here, right? So I want to give the caveat for why I don't think that it's as chalked up necessarily as it usually is.
Yeah, and I agree. Yeah. I just wish that the U.S. had the kind of political economy and the capacity to be able to say, okay, we're going to respond to this. This Guinea-Bissau oligarch wants to park his, $25 million that he stole here. Well, it's going to cost you 20%, and we're
20. What are you talking about? 20,
50,
way more than that.
Let's negotiate 50,
I would say
75.
50 period.
And with that, we're gonna fund our school system.
Sure. Yeah.
Instead, we don't do any of that. We just completely sell for nothing to the oligarchs. And if that is the system that we're going to have, then people are going to burn it to the ground, and rightfully so. But then without replacing it with anything else.
Well, listen, not a lot of disagreement, just giving a little bit of a counter perspective, per se. You don't really want an economy, right, that relies entirely on foreigners coming over here and spending a bunch of money.
Right, all those
bullshit they don't need and then we don't need either.
All those unoccupied rental properties that are, or condominiums or whatever, that are just money laundering and people stashing money, that drives up the price of rent.
You're exactly right.
For everybody else.
There you go. So maybe it'll be cheaper in Plattsburgh or in Maine.
Oh,
we'll see.
Everything is going to get cheaper in a lot of ways, except for the problem that your 401k is going to crash, the tariffs are going to go up, the currency is weaker. But the good thing about a deep recession is that, yes, rents are going to go down.
That's true. Yeah, I remember talking about that about gas prices. I was like, well, gas prices could go down, but it will be because of demand, and that's actually really bad.
Because nobody can afford it,
Exactly. Yeah. Now, in terms of so one relief the market is looking for is some trade deals. They're like, give us trade deals, give us trade deals, give us trade deals. Let's see some progress.
Because they think that'll signal the end of the war.
That means to signal the end of the trade war. It means a 90-day pause will not actually go into effect after 90 days. It'll mean that the China trade war is actually going well, that there's negotiations and all of that happening. So everybody has been looking towards Japan. And because Japan, top 3 U.S. ally, G7 economy, one of the world's developed, slapped with a 25% tariff. Japan negotiated a trade agreement with Trump in 2019. Trump notoriously respects them. He loves Shinzo Abe, thinks that he looked out for his country. I love Japan as well, as any watcher knows. But what's interesting is that the Japanese, this time around, are signaling much less optimism around any sort of trade negotiation. There's been a massive decline in trust on the Japanese side for how these are going to go. And already, just this morning, I was looking at the futures. Let's see, they are down about 1% on the S&P 500, largely as a result of this negotiation. So what we have here is a very interesting video flagged by our friend Arnaud. This is the former Assistant Secretary of Defense, Chas Freeman, who actually seems to have gotten some inside information from the Japanese trade delegation. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
The White House claims that there are direct talks going on somehow with the Chinese. I don't believe it. I think what is happening is what I described earlier. The Chinese are maintaining contact with us, routine contact. There is no negotiation going on. The Japanese have just been in Washington, and their experience apparently was they went to talk to the American leadership on this matter, and the American leadership said, "What are you offering?" And the Japanese said, "Well, what is it that you want?" And the Americans could not explain what they wanted. This is a cockamamie approach to negotiation. And I think the Chinese, having observed the United States break virtually every agreement it has agreed to in recent years, including the replacement for NAFTA with proposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico, that was negotiated by Mr. Trump in his first term, and yet he felt free to abandon it and repudiate it. What's the incentive to negotiate with the United States when the United States has no stated objectives that make sense and no record of compliance with its own agreements? So I don't think there is. I think the Chinese have decided they will wait us out and see how Americans like Walmart and Amazon denude of products.
That was a really interesting perspective, obviously, but it pairs with some of the reporting that's coming out now, Ryan. This is extraordinary to come from a Japanese prime minister. Can we go ahead and put B5, please, up on the screen? So the Japanese prime minister actually just spoke before Parliament Monday, his time, so several hours ago, and said, quote, "If Japan concedes everything, we won't be able to secure our national interests," saying Japan will not keep conceding to the United States in tariff talks. And clearly, they are just deeply confused. They don't know what we want. My personal favorite is the demand from the Trump administration of, why don't you buy more American rice? Why we're trying to tell the Japanese to buy our rice? Whoa. That's like telling the Chinese to buy tea from North. They're like, whoa, what? Hold on a second here. We got it. We solved that problem about 2,000 years ago.
And the other one he talked about was, Trump is very fixated on the lack of American cars on the roads in Japan. And as he talked about, and you were there recently, and tell us about your on-the-ground reporting. The prime minister's like, "Look, man, the cars have the steering wheel on the wrong side. we drive on the left side over here.
True.
So go ahead, try to sell your cars, but I don't think a lot of people are going to buy them because they're not."
Well, they do manufacture them with a different steering wheel
they'd have
for
to
England, but they don't have as big of a production run on those cars. But I mean, look, this is a secondary thing because they're bad cars. It's let's just all admit it. Okay?
And we're lobbying them to reduce their safety standards so that our cars can compete. It's like, how about we make better cars? And also, consumer choice matters.
Yes.
By driving the entire world economy into a recession in a tantrum style like Trump is doing, to try to pressure people to buy our products is going to backfire, even if let's say Japan is like, fine, we will even subsidize your Fords to come into Japan.
No, they shouldn't.
Japanese people still have to make the decision to buy a Ford.
Right.
Americans don't even want to be seen in a Tesla right now. You think a Japanese consumer is going to want to be seen in a Chevy?
Dude, first of all, what is it? I think 10% of Tokyo residents even own a car.
Right.
Over 90%.
Where are you going to park that thing?
So then secondary, they're obviously better run. They're literally designed for them. People buy Toyotas in America, okay? So why would you in Japan want to buy a Ford or a Ford F-150? Or let's say even a smaller truck run from any of the U.S. manufacturers. You would be an idiot to buy that over a Toyota Hilux. You literally would be an idiot. A complete moron. That's if you're an American. So now compare it to you're in Japan, you get subsidized rate and it's domestically produced, and it's for your own market.
Also,
by the way, I just looked it up. Japan produces 98% of their own rice domestically. What are we doing here? They only spend $700 million on rice. 50% of that is already from the United States. Why? Who cares?
Yes.
They're basically self-sufficient on rice.
They're an island.
It's been a solved problem.
Yeah, they're also an island. Like, like if you're an island, and also the current prime minister's base is these farmers, so he's not going to sell his farmers out. But if you're telling an island country they need to like reduce the amount of food that they produce for themselves, what self-respecting island nation would do that?
Right. Yeah. Well,
They didn't make it.
I could talk about this all day. It's just one of the dumbest things about the demand for the Japanese. Like, listen, if we want to talk about reciprocal tariffs, fine. We want to talk about trade imbalance deficit, fine. Actually, by the way, the Japanese are the best ally to work with on this. Toyota manufactures half those cars here in the United States of America.
A bunch of Hondas are made here.
So many of them are made. They have acceded to many of these demands, and they still get slapped with a 25% tariff. Now, if we want more tax credits and or threats of tariffs, I have no problem with that. If we go over there and we say, hey, listen, X percentage parts are still being manufactured in Japan. You guys are keeping a lot of the gold for yourself, like in terms of the high value chain, which we don't blame you, but we want to bring some of that over to make it more self-sufficient. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And some carrot and stick approach with the tax credit. But from the Japanese, they both are feeling threatened, which is at the worst time, right? We're in an alleged trade war with China. So what would we want? We want all the Asia Pacific to stand with us. Well, the South Koreans and the Japanese are like, I'm not so sure about this, right? They release a joint statement. The Japanese prime minister openly trying to declare independence from the United States here on a trade war in his parliament. That's the worst possible outcome. Again, for a G7 nation, one of our closest allies, a manufacturing powerhouse, and one that we are deeply reliant on for a core segment of our auto industry.
And real quickly, just to back up Chas Freeman, the EU's trade chief, Maros Sefcovic, met with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Bloomberg, and others report on this, also met with United States Trade Representative Jameson Greer. And the reporting is this, it's just an incredible line. Sefcovic left the meeting with little clarity on the U.S. stance and struggling to determine the American side's aims. So they did the same thing as the Japanese. All right, Americans are like, cool, what are you going to give us?
Right.
And then
they're like, well, what do you want?
Europeans are like, okay, what do you want? They're like, because what Trump wants to, U.S. manufacturing capacity to increase. What do Japan and European Union have anything to do with that? Like, it's like, all right, go ahead, like increase your manufacturing capacity, go for it. We're not gonna stop you.
Yeah,
do it.
The entire thing is preposterous, not only in its demands, in its execution, in the way that other countries have no idea what to do, and as I say, you can support tariffs and all this stuff in principle and also look at the way that this is being implemented and say this is a total disaster. I am for decoupling with China. That we would all recognize is going to have a lot of pain. So how do you offset pain? With government subsidy, tax credits, a plan, confidence. That's what the Chinese are doing.
And allies.
And allies. But and then this is exactly, so what does Xi Jinping do whenever he faces a trade war? He pumps billions of dollars into the economy, he lowers the interest rate, he makes sure that Amazon and e-commerce sites are supporting their Chinese manufacturing base to make sure that nobody in the supply chain gets wiped out from the small all the way to the big manufacturers. You continue to supply and make sure that you have an autonomous electric vehicle industry that stands completely alone from the United States and the Western markets. And then you go across the Asia Pacific and you cultivate allies like Vietnam. That's everything he has done. Look then at the United States. We have small e-commerce companies. Ryan Peterson, my friend who works at Flexport, we had him here on the show, people will remember. He predicts in 90 days mass bankruptcy at a small e-commerce level. They're dead at 145%. They're never coming back from this.
Right.
In fact, he even flagged that there are already two companies who he knows, they just gave up. They sold to China.
Right.
Because they were reliant on the factories there to produce their goods. They said, listen guys, we can't do business anymore. Your government is propping you up. We'll just sell you our business, our leads and everything. You can take over. After they're happy. They've got the cash in the balance sheet. Our people have nothing. So that's the disastrous part of this. The big guys, Walmart, they'll be fine. Okay?
Ish, yeah.
Yeah, ish, sure. They'll take a 20% haircut on their stock. all of us will go work for Walmart as a greeter or whatever. They will survive. I think that's the one thing we could say with assurance. But many of the smaller products that go into a Walmart, many of the people who are e-commerce, folks or whatever, people who built big businesses, they have no runway now.
Right.
They have no product. I talked previously as a new expectant parent, how watching these stroller prices, it hurts, man.
Yeah.
Why? Because you know what? Okay, yeah, I bought mine before all these tariff things, but if you go on Facebook Marketplace, the secondhand market and all that, the price there is already going to skyrocket. And people feel a tremendous amount of anxiety about buying the proper car seat, the proper stroller. Of course, who doesn't want to protect their child? And now they're getting charged for the privilege. And that just is unconscionable to me.
And the other thing that Xi Jinping is doing is targeted supports for people who are getting hit by the policy changes.
Yeah.
So if you are a small business or a medium-sized business that was reliant on exports to the United States, he is helping you find, he's doing all the things you said, helping you find a domestic audience. His diplomats are working to find you consumers in Europe or Africa or Japan or wherever else. And in the meantime, he's offering financial support to you so you survive this difficult time. The United States is not doing that. All of these companies that are facing the short-term pain, as Trump supporters call it, are not getting any support. And so when the long-term gain that's supposed to come rises, those people won't be around to reap that. It'll be the Chinese companies and others the Chinese companies and the oligarchs who are able to come in and and buy for peanuts and buy for scraps what's left of those companies, and then if there is any long-term gain, it'll go to those.
You're right. It's just one of the dumbest possible things that we have seen this all play out. If they don't back down soon, the damage is going to be immense. The price increases are already here. You can see it as the inventory starts to bleed, and the next time you want to go buy consumer electronics, iPhone, and all that stuff, remember, Trump did give a pause, but he said that there is a separate 232 sections, 232 style tariff coming on tariffs specifically for consumer electronic goods. NVIDIA just got slapped with that export control. And by the way, even on this front, just last tangent, and the CEO of NVIDIA, the moment that we announced our tariff or export license on his chips to China, guess where he was? China. He flew to China to assure them that we will always do business in China. He said, quote, "We have done business in China for 30 years and we have no plans to stop." Okay? That's a problem. Because we can see here, he has no confidence that, first of all, he doesn't know whether these tariffs are going to last or not. He has no idea. But second, he can see where his butter is, what is his bread is buttered.
Yes.
50% or some revenue is over there. And he's not getting any help from the United States of America. I can guarantee you they probably threw everything in the book at Jensen Huang. And look, I think that's deeply unpatriotic and all of that, but I'm a realist. It's a capitalist. What are you going to do?
Our companies are called multinational corporations for a reason.
Yes.
They are not American corporations, and we should stop believing that they are.
Right. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.